Eric the Turf Teacher Jones. Oh, yeah! Teaching you life lessons, business strategies, and leadership.
Let's grow together.
If you're needing irrigation, landscape, or pesticide credits, check out my website at turfteacher.com. Every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., we host Turf Talk Tuesday for pesticide credits and have online courses for both irrigation and landscape contractors. There are also several opportunities to get your credits at one of our seminars that we do throughout the southeastern United States and information on our Christmas lighting course. Check it out again at turfteacher.com. All right, so welcome to our course. It's good for one pesticide credit in categories L, D, N, and X. And we're going to talk about PPE. We're going to talk about the safety, the storage, and the security of our pesticides. And it's a good topic to revisit every now and then, because I think a lot of us, we get busy and we tend to maybe not want to put on the PPE that's required, or we may not properly transport our pesticides from, either the storage facility or, or our vendors where we purchase them from back to our shop, and then possibly, just setting them in the back of the pickup truck when we are actually making applications. And so a lot of the individuals out there they get in a little trouble when it comes to this. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do, because we got some young blood out there that are our pesticide inspectors, and it's good to see them out there active in it, even though we may go our entire career without being stopped. Or when we do get stopped, it seems like it's, once every month for, 2 or 3 months, and then it might be years again before we see the inspectors. But we'll go ahead and start off with personal protective equipment. And, we might not be the ones who are ignoring the PPE recommendations or requirements for the pesticides. It could be our applicators that actually work for us, and us being the employer and not, or providing this PPE to our employees is wrong and illegal at times. And so we must make sure that it's on hand. We need to train them on how to correctly wear it, why they need to wear it, and make sure that they're doing. We may have to do some spot checks on them and sneak up on them on the job sites and make sure they're doing it, because ultimately, it's up to you for their safety. But our objectives for this part of the course is we're going to define what chemical resistance is and know if the material is resistant to the chemical being used or not. We will choose the appropriate safety equipment and a respirator. We'll choose a self-contained breathing apparatus. We'll learn how to examine PPE for wear and tear, and we'll properly dispose of the PPE. And that's probably one of my most guilty ones. You spend all this money on the PPE, and it's hard to throw some of this stuff away because you think you can get one more use out of it, but you truly need to inspect it. And if there's any damage, you need to make sure you dispose of it correctly. And then storing and cleaning your PPE. Your technicians, they get home or they get back to the shop in the evenings, they're tired, they're wore out. They may not want to take the time to actually clean their PPE, but this is a very important part of the job, and it needs to be something that they do every single day. Just like cleaning our equipment, our spray tanks, our spreaders, we need to clean our PPE. You want to have clean stuff to put on the very next day when you're making your applications. And so with our chemical resistant clothing, water resistant is clothing that will keep small spray or splashes from penetrating. You're not going to, you'll definitely get wet if you keep making applications with it, or let's better yet, as much rain as we had here, if we're wearing water resistant shoes or water resistant coat, we're probably going to get wet walking from the parking lot to the store. The resistance not going to prevent you from getting wet. It's just going to keep those smaller particles from penetrating. Waterproof will keep any water soluble materials completely out. So you want to have waterproof shoes. And it's something that you may have to help your technicians out with, or let it be a part of the uniform if you're using a uniform company. And when it comes to pesticides, I think that's probably the best thing to do, is to have a uniform service. That way, the technicians aren't having to take those pesticide residues home with them. They're going to get stuff on the uniforms. And so if you do have the service that collects it on a weekly basis and, exchanges it out for new pants and shirts, it's going to be a lot better for your technicians. But waterproof keeps it all out. You need the waterproof boots. And then here lately in North Carolina, everything needs to be waterproof as much rain as we've had. Chemical resistance, this is no measurable amount of the pesticide will be able to penetrate, and often stated in exposure time. So if you're out there multiple hours using chemical resistance, there may be a chance for the pesticide to penetrate after repeated exposures or for a length of exposure. Chemical resistance, you'll probably see like the Tyvek suits that people are wearing. And I always think of it like in medical terms. You see the surgeons, they are wearing all this chemical resistant stuff to actually keep, the bad stuff that they may be carrying from getting into their patient, or what we've seen with COVID situations when a hazmat team is called into a facility where there's been large exposures, and they're going in and actually cleaning the rooms and cleaning the buildings that there was an exposure. And we got a good example of what a young man is wearing here. This is the Tyvek suit that's on it. He may be above and beyond the call of duty here. He's probably just spraying, a non-selective herbicide in the shrub bed there and on the pavement. He may not have to wear all that, but I'd much rather see somebody taking the extra precautions than not taking any precautions at all. But with our chemical resistant clothing, cotton, leather, such as our tennis shoes or leather gloves that we may wear, is not chemically resistant. And leather gloves are actually going to get wet. When you're wearing something that's wet from a pesticide application, that moisture is going to have the pesticide in it too. And so your hands are going to be exposed to it the rest of the day when you're wearing it. But canvas or other absorbent materials are not chemically resistant, and they hold that water. And you don't want that wetness up against your skin when it is, carrying remnants of the application. Best choices for chemical resistance would be plastics, rubber, or a non-woven fabric coated with a plastic or Tyvek. And this is what the young man here, he's got his rubber boots. He's got, plastic gloves on. He's got the suit on. He's wearing a hard hat. He does have the safety glasses on. And like I said, he could do without the Tyvek suit if he's putting out Roundup, but still great idea to have the rubber boots on and the actual rubber gloves. And he may be required to wear the hard hat, just depending on the site that they're at. And, especially being, it looks like a, driveway through the woods or whatever, it keeps, debris from falling on his head. But good example of what we need to do. Now, as I've gotten older in my career, I'll find myself probably wearing more stuff than I need to. When I was a young guy out there, I was like, man, I don't need all this stuff. I'm not going to do it. I hated wearing the rubber boots like that, but that was probably, the minimum that I did. But I've been guilty of spraying lawns in a short sleeve shirt. I've been guilty of, doing it in a pair of leather shoes. I'm not going to lie. We get caught up, we forget to do it, or we don't bring it to work with us, and we're out there doing it. But now I read that label. I make sure that I'm wearing exactly what I need to wear. And even times when a respirator is not called for, I will do it. I remember spraying a ton of speed zone in my career years ago, spraying it for the broadleaf weeds, and start out in the morning spraying it. Everything's fine or whatever. But by the end of the day, I'd have a massive headache. Well, I started personally to choose to wear a respirator. It eliminated me getting those headaches. And it may be that with other pesticides, but that was one that really definitely affected me. With we need to check for signs that the material is not resistant. If there's any color changes to the suits that we're wearing, or the gloves or boots that we're wearing, if they become soft or spongy, and you'll feel that, you'll pick up the suit or you'll pick up the shoes and they're just too soft, or they're very cushiony. You don't want it. If it swells up or it bubbles up, you want to toss it out. If it dissolves or turns to jelly, and I've seen PPE do that. I thought it was kind of weird seeing that, but you'll see some of the suits and some of the gloves, especially the gloves, will have that almost like opening up a can of the Vienna sausages, that jelly that's in it. I've seen that material or that substance on some of our PPE, our gloves that we'd wear. Any cracks or holes that may get in it. We're working around equipment all day long, getting the spreader off the truck, pulling the hose and leaning over the tailgate. You could get rips in your suit. You need to check this and inspect it on a daily basis. If it's a brand new suit and you get a hole in it, well, it needs to go in the trash. You don't need to have you or your technicians out there, spraying in it when the pesticide can get through that hole and onto their cotton clothes that's going to be rubbing up against them all day long. If it gets stiff or it becomes brittle, you need to toss it. And here we have a guy, older picture out here, he's not spraying in an agricultural setting. He's got a long walk across that field, but he does have the chemical resistance coveralls on. He does have his safety glasses or goggles. And I've asked some of the inspectors and ag agents, what is the definition of safety glasses? Now, our small reading glasses that I have to wear, these little guys right here, not safety glasses. But some of the larger sunglasses that actually do a wraparound on the eyes, I've been told, we would not get rode up by wearing those. As long as the eyes are 100% covered and there is some wraparound coverage, would be fine with that. If it is a mist that we're doing, a fine mist or whatever, we would probably want to wear the goggles, though. And this young man is wearing a respirator. He has his chemical resistance gloves on. And I don't know about those boots right there. They say chemical resistant rubber boots, but to me, those look like your typical kind of hiking boots or whatever there. And the bad thing about what he's doing right there, he's spraying that and he's going to walk through it immediately. He's not walking backwards or anything. If he's walking forward, he's going to be stepping in that chemical. So we definitely want to make sure that we are wearing the correct boots in that situation. With protecting your skin, our work clothes, bare minimum should always be long sleeves, pants, socks, and shoes. Now, my guys, it's hard for them to understand that long sleeves is a must. We've had guys cut the sleeves off. We've had all kinds of issues when it comes to uniforms. But if they're spraying a pesticide, you got to have the long sleeves, the pants, socks, and shoes. But how many of y'all have seen some of your colleagues out there spraying in flip-flops and spraying in shorts? Do it all the time, don't they? They're asking for trouble. They are asking for trouble. Why would you want to get this stuff on your skin? Now, granted, some of the stuff that we spray maybe isn't that bad for you. At least it's not a restricted use pesticide, but still, nonetheless, it can damage us. And I don't want that stuff on our skin. You need to check the label for the requirements and whether or not coveralls are needed, or if you need to have that chemical resistant suit or apron on. Now, with the apron, you may have to wear the apron when loading and mixing the chemical, but it may not be required when you're making the application. It's just when you're handling the concentrate chemical would the apron be required. And so there are a lot of instances where you need to suit up pretty good when mixing and loading your pesticide, but when you're making the application, you can take off some of that PPE. With your coveralls, make sure they are made from a chemical resistance material. And I know we like wearing, some of these thin dicky coveralls that we may work in the shop on our machines and stuff. Those aren't what we're talking about. You need to have that Tyvek suit on that's going to prevent that moisture or any of the pesticide particles from getting to your other clothes. Securely close the opening so the entire body is covered. And do not tuck the shirt in if it is a two-piece suit. Always let it hang over the pants. That way, if there's any spray droplets that are going down, they don't have a chance to get around that belt line. And coveralls should be loose fitting to create another layer between the suit and your skin layer. And this is just that pocket of air, which is a good separation between the clothes, and it'll allow it to kind of breathe. You don't want to sweat in those things either. Always check the pesticide label to see if you should wear the suit or apron. Make sure it is made of rubber or plastic, and the apron should extend from at least your neck all the way down to your knees. So you're going to look like a meat cutter out there, and it's going to be pretty thick, heavy, but it is what is required. With your gloves and footwear, exposure to the hands is reduced 99% if wearing chemical resistant gloves. And how many times do your guys probably get out of the truck, and they've got their gloves sitting there on the floorboard because they don't want them in the back of the truck, which, there needs to be a place they can put them in the back, but 9 times out of 10, they put them in the front with them. They get out of the truck and they're like, oh, shoot, I left my gloves in the truck. Well, I'll just make this one application and I'll make sure I wear it on the next house. That's when something's always going to happen. Or they're going to get the chemical on their hands. Then they're going to go and they're going to take a swig of, water or Gatorade. It's hot outside, or it could be near lunch and they're not washing their hands. Most products will require the use of the gloves when handling or mixing and when you're making the application. And then exposure to the feet is common, so always wear your sturdy footwear. Now, I also like keeping an extra pair of socks in the truck, because if my socks get wet just from sweat or whatever, I mean, it's a bad thing. I'm always changing that out. You want to take care of your feet. And when you're in those rubber boots, you are going to sweat. Your socks are going to get wet, and that's not a comfortable thing to be standing in all day. You ever taken off your rubber gloves when making an application and you can feel the sweat collecting down in the fingertips? You take it off and all that sweat runs out. So same thing happens with the boots. So keep that extra pair of socks. And even, wearing those knee-high boots, you're going to have it where your pant legs will get wet down there. So, change at lunch if you have to. How to wear your gloves. If your hands will be low, wear the gloves under your sleeves. So if you're, spraying just turf grass, whatever, you could actually wear the gloves underneath your sleeves. It's spraying above your head. If you're having to make an application into some trees, if you're doing shrubs and trees, wear the gloves over your sleeves with the cuff folded up. If working with hands both raised and lowered, wear the gloves over the sleeves and then tightly cuffed or secured with some heavy-duty tape. And I've seen some applicators, especially on farms, just driving by where we live. And I remember one time last year, we were headed down to the beach, and I seen a farmer. He had a tank on the back of his tractor, so it was runoff PTO, and he was riding around to the different telephone poles that were on his property, and he had some vines growing up in it, and he was spraying directly up all that telephone pole, and you could see the mist and drift just falling back on him. And, he's putting out Roundup. So whether or not if it's harming him or what, I think it does. I think Roundup can be a serious issue with as much of it as we've put out and not taking the precautions. But all that stuff was just falling directly on him. He had on short sleeve shirt. He didn't even have on gloves. He didn't have on glasses or anything. He did have a ball cap on. And with your hats, You need to have the wide brim hat or a hood that will protect when spraying overhead. The plastic safari hat with the plastic sweatbands is a good choice. You don't want it to be leather or cotton or anything, because that's going to absorb any moisture. And if it gets pesticide in it, it's going to be rubbing on your forehead. And with your forehead, you're going to absorb more pesticides there than other parts of your body. Your hands, palm of your hands, your forehead, your armpits, down in the growing area. That's where you're going to get, even in the growing area, that is 100% absorption rate when a pesticide is down there. So if you're not wearing gloves, and even when you do wear the gloves, you need to wash your hands not only after using the bathroom, but before you go to the bathroom. The hat must not contain any absorbent material, and many chemical resistant suits or jackets will have the attached hood. And that's one of my favorite ways to do it, is just pull that hood on it, because it's going to be with your Tyvek suit. Protect your eyes. Check the label for eye protection requirements. And with your safety glasses or face shields, they are, the best. They are comfortable, especially the face shield right there. And you've got, wide range view. It's not fogging up like the goggles will. And they do provide very good protection. And you could have your sunglasses on, or your corrective lens glasses on underneath this face shield. With the worker protection standard, which, it came about years ago, mainly because of agricultural practices where we had migrant farmers that were released back into the field to start shortly after an application. And some of these farmers were getting sick because they were entering the fields way too soon. And if the label does require goggles with the worker protection standard, they must always have access to an eye wash dispenser or station. So be careful with that. If you're doing like Christmas tree farm and you're, using hired help for that, you don't want to get caught without that, because that's when the inspectors are going to roll up and they're going to check for your eye wash station, or or just, it could be handheld bottles that will wash out the eyes. With your respirators, protect the respiratory tract. It is it's something that you don't want to mess up. If it gets inside, you're going to be suffering for it. But your nose, throat, and lungs are more absorbent than the skin, and wearing a respirator will protect you if there's any chance of exposure through inhalation. Better safe than sorry. And just like I said, I probably wasn't doing myself any favors by making the application of Speed Zone without a respirator. And I was getting the headaches from it. But when I started wearing just a regular old respirator, I didn't have to wear the full shield like I was a firefighter. But just, half one right there, it prevented those headaches from happening. Check your OSHA standards when selecting the respirator. Now, with their respirators, we can have some air supply to them. Here we have a gentleman with a supplied air hose to it. So almost like a Navy diver or a diver that's working on a ship doing some welding. They will have a line attached to their helmet like that, where they're getting clean air from the outside source. It uses that long hose and a full face mask. There's also the self-contained respirator, which is more what our firefighters would use. This provides clean air from an outside source and uses a compressed air tank. Now, the only time that I've actually had to see this used was at our strawberry farm. And this was back in the days when they were still using methyl bromide underneath the plastic. So years ago, they were laying the plastic on our plastic culture in our rows, and we had to have two guys suited up like this. Why did we have to have two guys suited up when you have to wear a respirator like this? The guy that's making that application, what if something happens to him and he has an exposure? Well, something like methyl bromide will kill you. And you got to have somebody standing by with a suited up, ready to go in and make sure that the exposure's stopped. So if this applicator that's running the tractor, putting down the plastic and putting the gas underneath it, falls off the tractor and, is actually out there suffering an exposure, what would be the first thing that we would have to do as the backup applicator? We shut down that exposure. We turn off the machine. We turn off the gas tanks or whatever. We're not going to help. We can't help this individual if we get exposed to it, by trying to pull them away from it. You got to stop the exposure and then remove them from the actual site where it happened. But could you imagine spraying lawns and wearing something like this? We probably wouldn't have any customers, would we? So thank goodness we don't have to wear that in lawn care. All right, so we have an air supplying respirator, and then we have the air purifying respirator. So remember that the air supplies, the two that we just saw, provides clean air from an outside source. The purifying respirator is a mask such as the gentleman here, and he's doing the positive and negative pressure fit checks. But you will use physical or chemical filters that trap and remove contaminants, and they come in many different forms. And so with the positive pressure fit, he's covering the exhalation valve and is trying to exhale. That's a positive pressure fit. With the negative pressure test fit, he covers the inlets and tries to inhale. And so if he's not able to inhale, he's got a secure fit. With the other one, the pressure, a positive pressure, if he's trying to blow out and he can't, he's got a good seal on that mask. And that's basically what we just talked about. Use it correctly, use the positive or negative pressure test to check it, whichever you feel most comfortable with. But again, that positive pressure, you cover the exhalation valve and exhale gently to test for a slight positive pressure. And with the negative pressure, you close the inlet valves, inhale gently so the face piece collapses slightly, and then hold your breath for 10 seconds to make sure there's no leakage. Maintaining it. When it's disposable, guys, that means it is disposable. We don't save it and use it for the next day. If it's a one-time use application, you take it off and you discard of it properly. Get rid of it. Don't try to wipe it down. Don't try to be a cheapskate and save it and use it for the next couple of days. If it's a one-time disposable use, get rid of it. With your reusables, although it is reusable, you need to replace it periodically to prevent exposure due to wear and tear. Like I said, getting in and out of our trucks, even though the coveralls may be loose, when we go into our trucks and we sit down, we may be pulling on them and it may rip slightly. Or there's something in the seat. We're always got tools with us. We've always got something that could actually, cause a penetration or a slit in the suit. Check it daily. Make sure you clean it daily between every use, even if only worn briefly. And unwashed PPE can build up toxic levels of the pesticides, even if the chemical is not highly toxic. Washing and drying, always wash separately from regular clothing. That's why I recommend, if you have an old washing machine or, find one at a yard sale and have it there in your shop. Have it in an area where your technicians can actually do that. You don't want them taking it home. You don't want to take it home and wash it. Have an old machine that will do it, that's the only thing you're using it for. You'll wash only a few of the items at a time. Use a heavy detergent with hot water on the longest wash cycle, and then do 2 rinse cycles. And then afterwards, you need to rinse the washer at least once with a full wash cycle to clean out any remaining pesticide residue prior to washing any regular clothing. Even though it's in your shop and you're not washing any other regular clothing, I still recommend running it one more time after you get the PP out. With maintaining your eyewear and respirators, wash with a detergent and hot water. Sanitize by soaking in a mixture of 2 tablespoons of bleach per gallon of water. Rinse thoroughly and then dry thoroughly or hang to dry. And you're always going to smell that bleach forever once you do that. If you remove your respirator between handling activities, wipe the body down and face piece with a clean cloth. Remove any pre-filters. These do not lose their effectiveness when exposed to air, and then seal the respirator in an airtight container. At the end of each workday, remove the pre-filters and discard of the other filters, cartridges, and canisters, or seal in an airtight container if they are reusable. And remember to clean and store the respirator or discard of if disposable. With our transportation, storage, and security, we are going to learn how to safely transport and store the pesticides, use the storage area warning signs, have a inventory maintenance program, properly maintain and discard of pesticide containers and labels, plan for a spill management, dispose of your pesticide waste, and then develop a security plan and prevent problems. Now, with our inventory, we need to keep 3 lists. We need to have one in our office. We need to have one at our storage facility. And where does the other inventory list need to be at?
In the truck, in the vehicle.
Well, you'd keep a list of everything that you're using on the truck, but your total list of everything that you have in your storage facility.
Fire department.
The fire department, exactly. Good job, because we don't want these young men and women coming to our place, our landscape shop, and we've got a fire. They need to know exactly what's in that storage facility, because it may not be worth trying to save those chemicals if it's going to, kill one of our EMS or firefighters. So they've got to have a current list of everything that you're keeping on shop. And now, luckily for us in lawn care and landscape maintenance, we're using the same stuff pretty much all the time. We're using some type of glyphosate or other non-selective herbicide for, weed control in the landscape beds and stuff. And then pretty much with our lawn care program, it's the same stuff, year after year. So we should have a small list that we can maintain very, very easily. When transporting, never transport the pesticides in the passenger seat of a vehicle. These chemical spills and fumes can cause serious damage to yourself driving or any occupants in the truck or vehicle that you may have. Use enclosed or locked cargo boxes and place a barrier between the pesticides and the occupants. Now, best thing, I like going out, get you one of the Milwaukee red boxes that they got, or get another type of box that's like that's got the actual places to put padlocks. Secure them in the back of the truck, bolt it down onto the trailer or whatever, but you need to have a place that can be locked and hidden out of sight. For one, we're paying way too much money for these chemicals, and they'll get feet and they'll walk. So we want to keep them locked up for that, and we want to keep them locked up for safety issues. And these containers, they are, self-containing. So if you do have a spill or one of the bottles is leaking, it's collecting inside of that plastic container, which is pretty thick-walled, and we can clean it out when we get back to our shop. But the safest way is in the back of the truck or pickup, never in the passenger compartment. Make sure that you have a non-porous truck bed or keep it in one of those plastic containers. The easiest way to do it is with that. Make sure that the truck is in good operating condition, and then secure all containers to prevent the loads from shifting. Now, you can see here, these two guys, pretty good setup. They got their chemicals. They've got it strapped down, so they're not going to be able to turn over. They are secured. They have a spill kit inside their toolbox. So they've got some like kitty litter to help, sweep it up, or the oil spill stuff. You can use that, anything that's going to absorb it and that you can sweep it up. They've got their dustpan, broom, and a small shovel, and they have these spill blankets that they can put over top of it. You don't want to be on, your local news channel at 6 o'clock when everybody's eating dinner or watching the news, and they see your lettered up truck in a pesticide spill. Or if there is a situation, you want to at least have everything that you need where they'll say, hey, there was an issue, but Eric Jones's company was doing the right thing and they had everything they needed to contain the spill. The operator, both the owner and operator of the vehicle transporting pesticides can be held accountable for injuries, contamination, or damage. So every driver should understand the hazards and how to react to a spill. Even though your technicians may be certified, some of them may even be licensed. If they are in your truck as your employee, if they wreck and they have an accident and it's their fault, both you and the driver of the vehicle can be held accountable for it. And if they're carrying some nasty pesticides that's actually getting, spilled and going down into our stormwater system, we're definitely going to make the local news with that. Now, anybody been paying attention to what the EPA's recently done here this past week when they announced that basically they made their final decision on what they are calling waters of the United States, and they're incorporating areas that were not held as waters of the United States. So a lot of these waterways and even drainage ditches are becoming underneath federal jurisdiction. And so it's going to affect agriculture. It's going to affect the irrigation industry big time, because if you're digging or you're spraying around some of these protected waterways, you're going to have to get permits. And from what I've heard, these permits are not going to be cheap. Other safety precautions when transporting the pesticides: inspect the containers prior to loading to make sure they're in good condition, that they're tightly sealed, and that they don't have any spilled pesticide on the outside. Now, if we've got them in a box, that's, we're better off right away, because you're always going to get some residue on the outside of the container. What's going to happen if we are on the way to the next job, or we're on the way back to the shop and we're running through a small thunderstorm and these containers are getting that rainwater on it? And so that concentrate is being washed off of the container. It's coming out the back of the bed of the truck, and you start seeing like white foamy stuff coming out of the back of your truck. Not a good image to portray. We get criticized a lot in lawn care just because we're spraying chemicals, guys. So we need to protect that image, and we need to protect the environment. I'm not so worried much about my image as I want to do the right thing for the environment. And if we're to have an accident like that, or we're spilling it out the back of our pickup truck, we need to relook at how we're handling these pesticides. Inspect your labels to make sure they are clear and legible. Again, they get wet. They get messed up on the job site. Always keep some printed and keep it in a 3-ring binder in the front seat of your truck. Or better yet, if you've got a tablet or like an iPad, you've got them downloaded to that, so you have access to these labels and MSDS sheets at all times. And if you study them like we're supposed to, I enjoy reading pesticide labels. I want to see what's good and bad about this pesticide. I want to learn, what is the chemical that makes this pesticide work? And so if I am pulled over by one of the ag inspectors and they're asking me what I'm spraying, and if I'm able to spit this stuff out, clear and I sound like I know what I'm talking about, I'm less likely to get any type of citation. You want to know what you're doing, and you want to know what you're talking about. What if your customer comes out and asks you what it is that you're spraying? You want to be able to tell them this stuff. So read the labels. Handle your containers with care. Use packing or shipping containers for them, and then use a liner or tarp to cover the floor of the cargo area. And again, secure the load. Ratchet straps or keep them locked up in the toolbox. When transporting your pesticides, always stabilize other cargo that may damage containers. But here's what I like to do with this, guys. I don't want I know sometimes we have to do it, but my ideal pesticide setup is to have a one-person crew that's by themselves that takes care of all of our spraying and all of our fertilization. And yes, you may have to have two trucks doing that, especially during the busy season. But I don't want my mowing guys spraying for that simple reason right here. The mowers are on there. They're not putting the weed eaters back on the rack. They're just throwing the blowers in the back of the truck. It's hitting the containers. And by the end of the day, there's a hole punched out in the Roundup, the 2.5 gallon jug of Roundup. Not a good situation. And I don't care. It's going to happen. And so if you have that one individual that can go and spray all of your properties, that can actually, make some decisions on their own, you're able to charge for that. So why not have your spraying rig separate from anything? Because here's the other thing of that. If you've got a 3-person crew or a 2-person crew and you've got a backpack on there and they're supposed to be spraying the weeds, what's usually happening? You'll have one guy that's blowing off the sidewalks and pavement while the other guy's getting the backpack sprayer off. And let's say we've had some rain and we've got a bunch of weeds and stuff. So it's going to take a little bit to spray out the shrub beds. You got another guy that's just sitting in the truck, not generating any income. And then you got 2 mowers on the back of the trailer that, cost X amount of dollars that are not moving. They're not cutting any grass while he's running that sprayer. Keep it separate. Also, keep separate from people, pets, livestock, food, your livestock feed, your seeds that, if you've got a greenhouse or whatever, or any plants that you may be growing, you've got to keep your pesticides away from all of this. With your security, transportation security, the DOT requires a diamond-shaped placard on vehicles transporting hazardous materials. Ask the dealer if the pesticide requires this placard. And so really, maybe once in a while, will we have to do this? But pretty much what we're doing in lawn care, we're not going to have to worry about the placards. With storage, secure the site. Make sure to keep the storage site locked, to keep out unauthorized people, pets, or animals, and then post signs showing that the pesticides are stored within. Post no smoking signs with it because many of these pesticides are highly flammable. Now, everybody's on the vape kick, and so we don't really have to do. We don't have anybody that works for us that actually smokes cigarettes anymore. Everybody's vaping, so at least that's not going to happen. But you definitely need to keep the no smoking signs posted, and you need to let people know that this is a pesticide storage area. I love the little buildings that you can get at the big box stores. They almost look like the she shed or what people use to store things in these neighborhoods. Makes a perfect pesticide storage area. We're only going to have a few pesticides on hand at any one given time anyway, so we don't need that big of a facility. It's not like we're selling it to the public, so we can get by with one of these little 10 by 20 little barn shaped buildings that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. When you're storing, make sure you're preventing water damage, and you don't want to have your storage site near any public or private waters. Our commercial applicators, guys, the site must be set back at least 50 feet from a private well and 100 feet from a public water source. And, this could change. I haven't read the whole thing of WOTUS, Waters of the United States, but this could be changed here with the new EPA regulations. Moisture can cause the containers to rust or split, labels to peel off, or even smear and smudge. And the pesticides can actually clump, degrade, or dissolve when moisture gets into it. So within this building, you need ventilation. You don't need them to sweat. You don't need the containers to sweat, and you don't need moisture or rain to get into the building. So you've got to almost control that climate. You have to control the temperature. Freezing temperatures can cause the containers to break, High heat can cause the containers to melt or explode even, and the pesticides can volatilize and drift away from the storage site. And then store the containers out of direct sunlight so that they do not overheat. Provide adequate lighting. And, this could be something as, battery operated lights. They sell these at the big box stores, and you got a little remote control or an app on your phone. You can turn it on before you even get to the building. Handlers need to be able to see and read the label and also be able to detect spills or corrosion. And make sure you're using only spark-proof lighting. Use a non-porous material for the floor. Make sure that they're sealed off and that nothing can get down into it. The absorbent floors are impossible to decontaminate. Maintain the site. Do not store anything at the site beside the pesticide containers and equipment and spill cleanup kits. Never keep food or drink at a pesticide storage site, and have water available for decontamination. Keep labels legible. The label is the law, so make sure you can read it. If destroyed or damaged, mark the container with the common name, the active ingredient percentage, the EPA registration number, the signal word, whether it's caution, warning, or danger, and the use classification, whether it's a general use pesticide or a restricted use pesticide. And luckily, most everything we use in lawn care is a general use. Store containers safely with bulk storage, commercial storage of pesticides in stationary containers holding more than 500 undivided gallons of liquid pesticides or more than 4,000 undivided pounds of dry pesticides. This you're getting. That's why I don't want to have so much on hand, guys. I want to keep it just exactly what we're using. And if you're buying enough from your dealer, they're going to have trucks that are running daily, through pretty much to where you're at. So you can get a couple loads a week if you have to. Inspect for damage. If damage is found, make sure you put on the proper PPE and take appropriate action to prevent further spills or damage. If damage is found, use the pesticide at the site as per the label, and then transfer into another container that holds the same pesticide with an intact label. Place that damaged container into a larger container for disposal at a larger time. With your pesticide shelf life, maintain an inventory and mark your containers with the purchase date. Note the shelf life date on the product. Buy only as much pesticide as needed per season. And basically, how about per application, especially in lawn care? Just have what you need for that application. And it is illegal to use outdated products. Follow the disposal regulations. And a lot of times you'll have like a pesticide collection day. We have them here at the fairgrounds. You can take, all this unused pesticides and stuff. And it's kind of like an amnesty box that we had in the military. If we accidentally had a bullet in our pocket from coming to the range, we could drop it in that amnesty box and we didn't get in trouble. Same thing with these pesticides. If you're voluntarily turning them in, they're not gonna get you in trouble. Isolate your waste. Keep empty containers in a clearly marked area with the pesticide storage site, and then follow the directions on the label for proper disposal. Triple rinse all empty containers. Keep duplicate copies of labels on hand. Always wear recommended PPE when handling. Label all items used for handling the pesticides. Keep absorbent materials on hand. Kitty litter, fine sand, activated charcoal, vermiculite. Check the MSDS for materials used to deactivate a spill, and then note the bright dye used on treated seeds. Keep the treated seeds locked up away from children and animals. Always have clean water, soap, and paper towels on hand for decontamination or first aid. Benefits of the Good Security Program: it keeps employees, the community, and the environment safe, avoids costly losses, reduces legal risk and insurance rates, and reduces the risk of vandalism and sabotage. It protects confidential business info and improves relations within the community. When doing a risk assessment, all pesticides pose the risk of misuse or injury. Apply security measures in all aspects of transportation, storage, application, and disposal, and then create the list of assets to be protected. Your storage facility for one, the vehicles used with it, the equipment, tanks, your mixing, loading, and collection and containment sites, and the utilities are all need to be listed with your assets. Employee training. Employees are the first line of defense, so make sure they're trained properly on inventory control, security, emergency preparedness, and response. And hopefully you're getting all of your technicians at least certified, where they have to get their continuing education as well. They may not need to be licensed, but I definitely want them to have their certifications. When evaluating your security, secure the buildings and the property, secure application, equipment, and vehicles, protect your confidential information, and develop procedures and policies, and coordinate with authorities. And I recommend inviting out your local ag agent. Have them come out, help them do a site evaluation. They're not going to bust you for asking for help like that. Just have them walk around. They're going to give you some pointers. They're going to say, hey, that needs to be taken care of, or this looks great. You want them to know who you are. You want them to know your site, your storage facility, and they're going to help you out. That's what they're there for. They're not there to get you in trouble. Prevent the security problems. Create the security measures that prevent tampering. Work with local authorities when developing the plan, meaning the fire department, EMS. Keep and maintain your inventory. Make sure the storage area is locked. Review, update, and practice your emergency response plan on a regular basis, and post a list in a visible place of phone numbers of law enforcement and emergency response teams. Ask your employees to report instances of suspicious strangers or anyone with an unusual curiosity, and then report unauthorized persons or entries, and restrict access to your storage facilities. The only people that need to be in your pesticide storage facility is you and your technicians that are making the applications, and possibly the mechanic that may be working on some of the equipment that may be stored there with it. Your mowing guys or your landscape crews, they don't need to have any access to your pesticides. And that does conclude the actual lecture report part of it. We've talked for almost 52 minutes, so we're good on our time. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns about the course?
But still on the fertilizers for your pesticide, they need to be separate.
Do what, sir?
Fertilizers, you just keep that separate from pesticides?
Yeah, I'll keep them separate from our liquids. And usually we just got like a lean-to shed off the shop that we store that in, and we're fine with that. It's the liquid stuff that I'm more worried about. And they can't get to the fertilizer anyway, locked in stuff behind the gate. But it's like, I want that in that little self-contained building, all of our liquid stuff. All righty.
If you have an abundance of fertilizer, what do you do from one season to the next? Do you try to store it in a secure, dry area, or do you try to just go and get rid of it and start all over the next year?
Well, it's there's always going to be some left over, and so hopefully you go out there and you send out an email, or you do a social media post, and you get some clients. You pick up some new customers to help get rid of it. But what I like to do at the beginning of each year is calculate the exact amount of square footage that we're going to be taking care of, and order exactly what we need. And even if we order just a little bit short, our dealers running trucks all the time. We can pick up, another pallet if we have to, or go by and pick up a few bags. But the idea, it's kind of like, it's almost like ice melt, right? How many of y'all got ice melt on hand still from last year?
Right now, I do.
We're sitting around like, please let it snow so we can get rid of it,
Yes, yeah.
But it is just taking up space in the shop. We need to get rid of it. So, but I try to pinpoint exactly how much we're going to use at the beginning of the year, and order it per application. First round of pre-emergent, just get enough for that. then order your second round. Order just enough lime, so we're not having to worry about it. And that reduces theft, that reduces chance of spillage or breaking bags and all that stuff. So try to just get what you need.
Gotcha.
With this, I'll go ahead and upload the roster tonight. So here in about 10 minutes, you'll see this course posted to your online North Carolina Department of Ag. If you search NC Pesticides, that's the best way to do it, is just open up Google and do a Google search, NC Pesticides. The first one that pops up, click on it, and then you'll see where it says licensing and certification. And then you'll be able to click on there and find out how many credits you got. And you'll see this class tonight. Here's as soon as I do it.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Well, guys, I do appreciate it. Thank you for your business, and I hope you're off to a good season. Tomorrow's February 1st, so we got the longest winter month behind us, and let's hope we get some snow. If not, let's go ahead and get the pretty weather so we can get out there fertilizing.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Have a good night.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Eric the Turf Teacher Jones. Oh, yeah! Teaching you life lessons, business strategies, and leadership.
Let's grow together.